The name of this sermon is called Ruth and the Broken Rules. Now, Ruth is that one of those short chapters, one of the short books in the Bible that is a love story. And it's not one love story, it's three love stories. Now, the first love story is Ruth and Naomi. Naomi had lost her husband and her two sons, and she had two daughters-in-law. And Ruth, her daughter-in-law, would not leave her. I love you, I'm going to go with you, I'm going to be with you. Where you die, I will die. Where you're buried, I will be buried. Second love story is God's love for Ruth. Ruth had no business being in this narrative of Israel, but she was allowed to be in it. The third love story was, of course, of Boaz and Ruth, the two lovers, the two people that came together in spite of all odds, and God made them a part of the Bible. Now, because it's Remembrance Day, I'm going to tell you another story of the love of brothers, of inseparable friends. This is a First World War story, and these two men enlisted together. They trained together, they shipped overseas together, they marched to the front together, they stayed in the trenches together, and when the commander said, attack, they would go up out of the trenches and into the battle together. Well, in a battle, in a war, it's chaos. And these two brothers, friends, good friends, were separated by a bullet. The one friend, because of the unrelenting crossfire of the enemy, there was a retreat. But the one friend was shot, and he was on the battlefield. He wasn't dead, he was injured, but they were back in the trenches. And it was impossible to go get his friend. He was not able to go. It was impossible. But he decided to go anyway. And he told his sergeant, I'm going to go get my friend. I'm going to rescue him from the... And his sergeant refused to let him go. He commanded him not to go. You will get killed. It is a waste of life. His sergeant turned his back, and immediately his back was turned, the man went up out of the trench to save his friend. And a few minutes later, he was back with his friend. His friend was dead, and the man was dying. And in spite of the fact that the sergeant had great respect for the amount of courage this took, he said, it wasn't worth it. I told you it wasn't worth it. And the man said, yes, it was. My friend was laying on the battlefield, and as soon as I arrived, he said, Jim, I knew you would come. He stayed alive, waiting for his friend to come. He fought off death. And so, the story of two friends who loved each other, there's a true mark of a friend is a person who will be there for the friend in spite of the fact that every reason that you can come up with says it shouldn't be. Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Well, this is the story of how Ruth started. Now, to give you the background, Ruth was the daughter-in-law of Naomi. Naomi left Bethlehem and went to the land of Moab because Bethlehem in the land of Israel was in a famine, and there was food in Moab. So they went, husband, wife, two children, and they stayed there 10 years. And the two children got married to Moabite women. One of them was Ruth. And the husband died, and the two sons died. and now Ruth refuses to be parted from her mother-in-law. So I got three small, short points. The first one is refuse to be parted from Naomi and her God. Deuteronomy, Ruth 1:16-18 says, "But Ruth said, 'Do not urge me to leave you, or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. This may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me.' And she saw that she was determined to go with her, and she said no more." This would have been the most important conversations that was in their day. 3 women, no husbands. The small amount of revenue that had been generated was quickly depleting. What are we going to do? How can we do this? There's food now in Bethlehem. Should I go back to Bethlehem? What will that take? How can we sell everything and get some money to go back? What resources? So Ruth had her eyes completely open when she made this decision to go with Naomi. She knew that she would be leaving her family, she would be leaving her religion and her nation behind for the risky possibility of a new life. Now, Moab and Bethlehem are a ways apart. And so I did a little research, and here's what it says. They're between 30 and 60 miles apart, depending on where you were in Moab. So here's the border from Moab to Bethlehem is 30 miles, but they were in part of the, so let's say it's 45 miles, 50 miles, and if it was 30 miles, a day and a half's walk. But the resources I was reading said it was a 7 to 10 day walk, and the reason it was so long a walk is it was mountainous. It was not an easy, flat, level walk. And so they had to prepare to go by food and clothing and warm clothes for the night and whatever they were going to have to start their new life. Well, Ruth was willing to take all this on because she wanted to be with the God of Naomi. Now the second point is her new God broke all the rules. If you turn to Deuteronomy 23:3, I'll read that for you. You would almost think that God doesn't like people from Moab. This is what God says. "No Amorite or Moabite shall enter the assembly of the Lord. None of their descendants, even to the 10th generation, shall ever enter the assembly of the Lord." And if you go down farther to verse 7, it says, "You shall not detest an Edomite, for he is your brother. Do not detest an Egyptian, because you are an alien in his land. The sons of the 3rd generation whom born to them may enter the assembly of the Lord." These people, the 3rd generation, were welcome. Even to the 10th generation, they weren't welcome. He was saying, don't come. We're not interested in having you here. But God broke all the rules. Here she was a Moabite. And her descendants, if you remember the story of David, David was fleeing from Saul, and he arrived at the tabernacle, and he went in, and he got showbread, which was not allowed for him to eat, but he was in the temple. David was Ruth's grandchild, great-grandchild. He was in the temple. You see, not only did he make the exception that she would be allowed to be part of the nation of Israel, he also included her in the lineage of David and ultimately Jesus. There's a verse in the Old Testament and the New Testament that goes something like this. If you seek me, you will find me if you seek me with all your heart. If you seek me. That was what Ruth was doing. She was seeking God. Now, the third point is Ruth is the love story of the Bible. As I said, it's 3 love stories. Ruth 3, verses 10, says, Then he said, May you be blessed of the Lord, my daughter. You have shown your last kindness to be better than the first, by not going after young men, whether young, poor, or rich. Now, I read from this that he thought that Ruth was pretty, I can only say she must have been beautiful, because he was saying to her that she had lots of choices. He wasn't the only choice. And so as I thought about this, I said to why was Boaz alone? As you read the story of Ruth, he was a wonderful man who cared about his servants, he cared about the women who worked in the house, he cared about the poor people, he cared about people. He was kind, he was generous, he was thoughtful. All of those things make a man prime husband material. So, and he was rich. He had many fields, many servants. So why wasn't he prime husband material? Well, there must have been something that was wrong with him, physically, or that women didn't choose him. But he was saying to Ruth, thank you for choosing me, because you had lots of choices. But you didn't choose them, you chose me. Now, I'm going to tell you one last story. I made bookends. The first story was love of 2 friends. The last is a love story between a man and a woman. Now, this story would be 70, 80, 90 years ago, when you had hospitals, but the doctors' availability and skill level in microsurgery was not at all there. And a young man and woman, young couple, loving, beautiful life together, the woman is in an accident. And she's not hurt badly, but her face is cut. And when her face was cut, it cut one of the muscles in her face. Now, just so as you know, you have 50 muscles in your face. 50. 25 of them are used for opening, closing your eyes, for eating, but the other 25 are strictly for expressions, for being happy, for being excited, for being startled, for being scared, for being angry. All of those are expressions that God gave us, and those 5, anger, fear, happiness, surprised, shocked, are all a combination. If you add them together, there's 21 expressions your face can make. You can be surprised and happy, surprised and angry, surprised and scared. You can add these, put 2 and 3 together. Well, those muscles are very important for those expressions. And you know how when somebody has had a stroke and their face is wrong and they can't put the mouth right and they can't, that's what happened. That muscle that was cut changed her smile. She had a beautiful smile, but now it was crooked. It was crooked, and the doctor said, there's nothing I can do about your crooked smile. And so she was devastated because her husband kissed her, and what was she going to do? And because she was sad and injured and all of these things, she wasn't thinking clearly, and she wasn't thinking that her husband would love her no matter what. He would be happy with her no matter what. She was thinking out loud, my husband won't love me, I can't kiss him properly, I can't smile at him properly, he'll go for someone else. And so the doctors and nurses were upset because they were taking on her feelings and they didn't know her husband, and they thought maybe he'd walk in and this wonderful poor woman would be left and he'd walk out and never come back. And so the doctor made sure that he was there when the man came, and he took him aside and he explained to him that her face, the muscle in her face was cut and her mouth was crooked, but other than that she was still okay. And the man went in and sat by his wife's bed, and the wife was crying, and she was saying, I'm not pretty anymore, I can't kiss you anymore properly, I'm sorry. And he held her face in his hands, her perfect face, and he said, don't worry. He brushed all her fears aside and said, look, this can all still work. And then he made his face a mirror image of hers, so that his face was pulled down in the same way. And he took his hands and held her face and he kissed her and said, see, it's perfect. And at this point, the doctor knows he's not supposed to be in the room. The doctor knows that because he's a mere mortal. And he can't be in the presence of such perfect love. He has no business being there, and so he leaves. Well, this is the story of Ruth. This is the story of us. This is the story of Jesus. Jesus sees all our imperfections. He sees our crooked smile and our broken body and our broken spirit, and our sin has done all of that. And he sees all of that and he says, I am coming to rescue you, and I will be you. I will take on your body, your broken body that's broken by sin, and I will take that on. And I will become the sacrifice. I will die on the cross for you so that you can come to me and we can be perfect together. The love will be perfect again. He chose to love us at great cost, to die on the cross and rise again so that we could have that perfect love that wasn't possible before. And see, God came down from the upper story to the lower story, and he said, I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to leave this story, put this story in the Bible so that you can see what a kinsman redeemer was. I came to redeem you. You see, this beautiful story in the Bible, the story of Ruth, is considered to be the best short story in all of literature in all of time. It's so perfect. It's an illustration of how God will send his son Jesus to die on the cross to redeem us. At what great cost it was to redeem us. See, God stepped in from the upper story to the lower story to redeem this one foreign woman and make her life part of the life of Jesus, to bring us that to the point where he will save us. It's a wonderful story. And you see, it wouldn't have been a wonderful story if somebody else had redeemed. It had to be this way, and it has to be Jesus. And you can't be saved by any other means other than Jesus. Let's pray. Thank you, Lord, for being there for us to save us, and for this beautiful story. In Jesus' name, amen.